This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DataOps Summit Canada 2022. I'm your host, Garima Bajpai. I have today's panel with me, and this is the DataOps Technology panel. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Garima Bajpai. I'm based out of Ottawa, Canada. I'm also the founder for the DevOps community of practice here in Canada, which has many chapters: Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Atlantic provinces. And I'm also the producer for the DevOps Summit Canada and DataOps Summit Canada. We also host multiple events around the year on these topics and emerging technology topics. So stay tuned for our other events and other panel discussions, talks, and fireside chats. But today we have a very, very eminent panel, and I will like to start this panel with getting the introductions done. So let's introduce ourselves. Arthur, why don't you introduce yourself and pass the ball to the other panelists?
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Marima. So hey everyone, Arthur Demaglis here. I'm based out of Toronto. I work at IBM. I'm a senior technical staff member, so software architecture is my day job. I was with the Webster application server for about 12 years, so very heavy in DevOps and application development and that side. And the last 2.5 years, I've been on the Watson AIOps organization, so focusedly having on AIOps and applying AIOps to different parts of the business and industry. So that's my strength focus there, AIOps. Let me pass to Gautam. Want to introduce yourself?
I'm Gautam Palpa. I'm an executive advisor at VMware and also the founder of Transformity. It's a thought leadership group that tries to help transform organizations and people through empathy and technology. For me, I've been in the lean, agile, and DevOps space for, I want to say over 15 years now. I love people, processes, and cultures. And for me, technology is an enabler that only helps elevate the human quality of life. And I try to work towards all of those things. I also have a book called Leading with Empathy that's out there. So I'm really excited to be here. I've been a champion of DataOps for a very long time. I believe in data democratization, especially from a people and process perspective. And so really looking forward to the various insights and the perspectives that all of you are going to provide on this particular panel. Let me toss it over to Mir.
All right, sounds good. First of all, thank you so much, Krishma, for the invite and be here with the elite panel here. So I worked at Kraft Heinz as a head of software engineering, and I've been part of Kraft Heinz for the last year or so. My role here in Kraft Heinz, right? So the way I want to describe it is like to drive an engineering first culture, right? So that's one thing that I want to drive here within the organization, and to the heart of engineering first culture is the concepts that we're going to talk about: data ops, DevOps, MLOps. So these are sort of the core to it, on top of the overall developer experience. And my sort of the main charter here is to build, foster sort of the culture of innovation along with the engineering culture, and build products for Kraft Heinz, which are, scalable, that could work across many organizations. In my past life, I come from, organization which are product focused organization, and I've led many sort of cloud migration, digital transformation, you name it. So I've done a lot of those, and the key to all of this have been for me is DevOps. So I've been in the area of DevOps for the last 10 plus years across all organization, cloud native to non-cloud native. So it's definitely an area of passion, and I've written quite a few articles on AIOps, DataOps, DevOps, you name it. So they're all available on DevZone. That's my sort of the area that I shared my article. So very happy to be here, and actually I'm here to learn more from you guys. Then I'm not sure how much I can add, but thank you. So I'll pass it on to Abhijit.
Yep. Hello everyone. This is Abhijit. So I am part of TCS. They're in BFSI Technology Advisory Group. I'm part of it. So my daily job is to advise different customers of TCS, and I'm a solution architect, and I am practicing DevOps for last 6 years. So yeah, so I will pass on to Raghuveer.
So, hi, this is Raghuveer. I work for TCS. Abhijit is my colleague, and we work for the BFSI side of TCS, which essentially means we are working with the largest number of TCS customers. And if you look at BFSI, we almost serve all the BFSI customers around the globe. So we have been the central DevOps support team of BFSI, TCS BFSI for quite some years. In fact, we started in 2015 for the group, and it's been till then. So things have matured in our world. When we started, there were no containers. Docker didn't come. So, but still, what people wanted to have some views. So we wrote a book, which was essentially, endorsed by Patrick and John, and the book essentially talks more about how to quantitatively look at this phenomenon DevOps. So with that, when we kind of understood how to look at DevOps from an architecture, from an implementation lens, we then moved to more specialized areas like data, like machine learning, deep learning, that's on one side, and also on the security reliability on the other side, which also has got a lot of data angle. Particularly working with BFSI, there is a lot of regulatory compliance, and data is one of the critical piece in those sides, and they're not easy to move in general. So the challenge with every CDO, the challenge with every CIO on the BFSI side also are reflected in our articulation when we talk DataOps. So Abhijit is there, I am there. So we have those point of views, and we will be happy to share our point of views and also understand the other point of views that the eminent speakers have in today's session. Thank you. Over to you, Garima.
Mahfuzat.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Mahfuzur Rahman, and I'm coming from PepsiCo, Arthur, IBM, Markham. That's where I started my career, and came to Dell, and somehow I stayed with PepsiCo. So this is my last 15 years with PepsiCo. I'm in solution delivery. PepsiCo is a very product-centric organization. We have over 500 patents and 500 products that we deliver. My specific role, I'm in SAP. My team manages all the releases that goes on. So again, you saw me, I came in 5 minutes late. It's a TCO weekend for me. So absolutely, this is something. And I am absolutely focused for this weekend, but absolutely, can't miss you all. This is what makes me who I am, and I'm very proud to be here. So just giving a little bit of background where we are, when we started the release journey with SAP, I was told that you can do DevOps, you can do CI/CD pipeline, you can put bots in place. I have over 30 plus bots that taking care of some of the functional checkouts, some of the technical checkouts, some of the code reviews. We have a number of different tools in place that we do the SAST or DAST coding from day one. So that's my life. That's what we do, and it's something that we put still with all the boats. People first is our top of the agenda, and I'm here because of all of you. I'm here because of my team. Back to you, Garima.
That's great, Mahfuza, that you could join on your tight schedule. Thank you very much for your participation today. So one of the obvious questions to start this panel is what is DataOps and how industries use DataOps? I will give you some background on when I got introduced to DataOps was back in time when I started interacting with one gentleman from Data Kitchen, Chris Berg. He introduced me to DataOps and he actually created a DataOps manifesto. He actually went to conferences and events talking about DataOps. But now it's the time, when we see DataOps, coming to life. So I'll point this question, Arthur, to you, that what is DataOps? And, from your experience, can you tell us how industry people are using DataOps?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very good question, especially since my day-to-day is with AI ops. It's nice sometimes to stop and look at the other ops that are around us. And so my perspective, kind of building on the DevOps experience that I have, is when you look at DataOps, is an application of DevOps, but instead of the microservice or the code application, you're dealing with data, but you're doing some of the similar things. You're designing the data, you're coding, right? You're extracting data. It has to go through some kind of testing to see, is this the right data? Is it the right quality? There is this notion of deploying the data somewhere and monitoring if what's going on with that data. So a lot of the principles of DevOps you apply to DataOps, but instead of that code that would be in Java going across, you have data there. And what I perceived is kind of two camps. There's the more business side of data ops, where you're using the pure data. So let's say for like marketing purposes or statistics or something about the business. So it could be like sales driven, or how users are interacting or that kind of things. And from my world, there is the IT side where data is logs, metrics, tickets coming in. So things that are more kind of like mathematical and not so much user business. And is a nice kind of notion that if you look at AI ops, it needs data to be fed. You cannot have AI ops without having logs and metrics and tickets and events coming in. And that's data. So you need to have some kind, even if it's a lightweight version of data ops, for AI ops to be successful, because that data needs to have a life cycle. You need to ingest it, you need to train it, you need to do things with that data. Maybe there was wrong data, you need to delete it. So there's a notion of deployment and rolling back. So it's nice that even from the IT perspective, where data is not maybe the superstar that gets presented, it's still so core to the business that you do need to have data ops even within AI ops. So that's kind of my view of data ops and how it fits.
Thank you, Arthur. And I will point this to Gautam now, because you come from an advisory board and you interact on a day-to-day basis with the CXO level, investment and also ensuring that we create a perspective around data ops. So what do you see, what is that value of data ops, and how industries are using that data ops concept in day-to-day?
Yeah. I completely resonate with what Arthur said, and I'd like to add a couple of other things that, at least from a business value perspective, data ops is really powerful. So the first thing is it helps with creating that rapid experimentation and innovation for faster delivery of insights to customers. That's the most important thing, and one of the primary reasons why a lot of organizations want to implement some kind of data mechanisms or practices so that they can get to those business outcomes faster. And the most optimal way that I would recommend, and probably I'm biased because I love data ops, is the most optimal way is data ops to try to implement those. And by implementing not just the technical practices, but also the architectures and the cultural norms, what we're doing is we're trying to reduce those error rates and increase the confidence level in the predictive and prescriptive analytics that is so important for organizations. And Arthur, you mentioned, especially from market and from a product perspective, the goal is to enhance that data-driven decision-making for the organization and provide the necessary information for the consumers of the data to get the right insight and more so now the foresight to make those tactical and business decisions that make them the market leaders. It's also about democratizing the data within the organization, having that collaboration against complex set of people and environments, and having the clear measurement and monitoring of results. And you know, Arthur, this is pretty much your day-to-day where you're working on you know, the IT side of data, making sure that the logs are coming in, the monitoring is coming in, that the metrics that are being captured is not assumed to be data or information, but in reality, it is the atomic parts that you use to get insights and to get information and knowledge out of. That's probably your day-to-day battle, where you have to explain to people and say, just because you're collecting metrics doesn't mean that you have data. What you have is, you know, the foundation to get the data. And this is where I think DataOps really will help drive and accelerate towards that business value that organizations need.
Excellent points, Gautam, and we'll come back to the second way and the third way. But I'll point this needle to Mir now, because you know, you mentioned that you have a large experience working with products, and you know, you also come from an engineering background. So I would like to understand from you, what is your perspective on can data ops be adopted without tools or without any specialized products and services? What do you kind of recommend from the first steps perspective?
So I'm going to be bold here and say, yes, you can adopt with this, with the specialized software products and services. Because at the end of the day, right, I mean, if you look at the definition, the DataOps is a methodology, right? It combines technology, processes, principles, all of the good stuff, right? But the heart of DataOps remains with, you know, what we call like the collaborative aspect of it, working across on the data domain, and then working across the groups, right? So it still remains the core to it, right? DevOps, same thing with DevOps, right? It's not about the tools. It's usually about culture and people, right? I've seen DevOps, and I've been in a field CTO role in the past, and I've seen they have the best of the tools. It's like they have Ferrari in it, but don't know how to ride it. They keep, you know, hitting the bumps and, you know, running over the curbs. It doesn't mean, so if you have the tools, but you don't have the discipline, then it's not. So that's why my rationale to yes, you know, I'm sure there's someone says there's no way, but yes, so I believe, yes, we can do it. However, what is key to it, right? So I'm coming from an organization, Kraft Heinz, who's new coming into sort of the digital era and all that. And that's where we're trying. We have all the tools, right? So tools are available. What we're lacking is, and we're focusing on is the discipline, right? So discipline of process, discipline of collaboration, and the discipline of the best practice, right? Putting all of that together. We've got tools already. We've got a lot of tools, more than we want. But it's just putting all of this together, right? Frameworks we talk about. Do we have the right frameworks to consider? You know, when we talk about data dictionary, we're talking about the quality and testing framework, garbage in, garbage out. We all know that, and we understand from a digital perspective, data and is a key. And people, you know, our first sort of a milestone is get the insights from the data. And if we don't get that right, we're not going to go too much further in terms of modeling, analytics, and all of that. So anyway, so to go back to the core of the question, yes. And however, the focus needs to be on it. I'm not saying yes with the big bold. Yes, in the sense, yes, you can make it, but at some point you would need to build something, right? Those decisions can be taken, but get the process in order and get the frameworks in place and have the discipline of running the data ops as a truly practical. So happy to hear if any of my colleagues have some other opinion on that.
Right, and we will actually challenge you with different opinions as well, because this is a very, very interesting question. So let's spend some time on this. And I will bring the TCS team in this discussion now. Raghu and Abhijit, you said that you have a client base, the largest client base in TCS in the BFSI space. What do you see there, you know, and to reflecting some of the points which Mihir has said rightly, that imbibing that culture of data ops, ensuring that silos of data has to be broken down, making collaboration a universal thing. How do you kind of start your journey in this space when you are consulting for your clients? And I have a second part of that question is that when you see there is already vendor lock-in in some of these products, services, how do you kind of break into that and break the silos through interoperability, challenging them to kind of share data and exchange data between platforms? So I would like to kind of get some perspective, Raghu, from you first, and then Abhijit.
Thank you. And what we, in our experience, what we have seen, uh, BFSI customers, the leadership of typical banks or insurance companies or financial uh, organizations, even fintech organizations, they first want to do what we call in today's world as DevOps. Now, when you say DevOps, how do you define DevOps? I mean, going back to that old question. So we took some time and we kind of put a definition around the same, and then we extended it to DataOps and then MLOps. So what is our definition? How do we actually explain this to a customer? I mean, just connecting the dots, what Arthur has said, Mir has said. You see, it is an engineering set of engineering principles. There are 9 major engineering principles. They are requirements as an engineering discipline. That means how do you engineer your requirements? It can be a data-oriented requirement. It can be a non-data-oriented requirement. So you have to do a proper assessment, analysis, and you have to understand the requirement properly. Now, there are various schemes to understand. Let's not get into that. Engineering discipline is itself, way to look at things. People spend a lot of years to study engineering, and we're not talking programming here. Okay, that's one. Second is your code or function and data engineering. That means you have a piece of application to write. You will have your DDL, DML, DCL to begin with. And then you will have to start working at your transactional database, assuming that you are using some kind of an application development. Then you have got your quality as an engineering discipline. Then you have got your build, release, deployment as an engineering discipline. Then you have got your infrastructure or environment, your off-prem and on-prem as an engineering discipline. And your post-production or service operations, where you do your L1, L2, and your support as an engineering discipline, which we call as service operations engineering. So these are your 6 fundamental engineering disciplines. You put it as an infinite, or you put it straight in small cycles. It's your visualization. That's one. Second, there are 3 more engineering disciplines which cuts across. One of them is security as an engineering discipline, and there are cross sections in quality, in code and data. Security comes in. There is reliability as an engineering discipline, and it cuts across multiple of these first top level 6. And all circumventing, we have a knowledge or ontology engineering. These 9 engineering disciplines is spread across your people dimension, your process dimension, and your technology dimension. So if I look at it with a mathematical mind, I will find a matrix. So 9 engineering principles and 3 basic DevOps dimension, people, process, and technology. You can add matrix to it. That makes your 4th. So 9 cross 3 or 9 cross 4. You have 27 or 36 cells. And we put questions, and we ask questions regarding value stream, question regarding lead time, question regarding time to market on each of those 27 to 36 cells. And what we come out with is a quantitative model. Now, this, while it can be very well applicable to DevOps, if you start focusing on the data-oriented paradigms of your requirement, then you get material movement of your data and also non-material movement, which is only information about your data. And that has to move and that has to have its own pipeline. Now you mentioned data kitchen as at the beginning. Now there are tools, if you look at the periodic table, there are tools that satisfies. But the question is not always of the tool, which we clearly mentioned, and I think Arthur also mentioned, every panelist mentioned. It is about how we are going to do something which we call as people architecture. So there is a dimension called people topology, which Abhijit can also elaborate, which is based out of people propensities. See, in a team, in a typical IT team, you will have people who are from Indian geographies, people working out of India, and also people who are working out of US, and also people who are working out of Canada, or maybe people who are working out of the Middle East. Everybody will have a different culture. So cultural barrier, even if in a specific organization you can have two different cultural polarity, okay, that is also possible. And in large banks, it is very much a reality. With a multi-vendor situation, very much reality. And with this phenomenon of great resignation, further reality goes up. Okay. So with all these things taken into consideration, it is very important for banks and BFSI customers, organizations to focus on how to manage and define the data ops lifecycle. So what we now say is DevOps lifecycle has got a certain set of priorities. DataOps lifecycle, we have another set of important priorities, given that the people who are working in data side may not always have a programming background. They will have a database administration background, who are no programmers. All they can do maximum is write a few SQL scripts properly. They are not, trained as pro, they are trained as administrators. And if you look at that entire database operation job and you start looking at everything as code kind of philosophy, there is a similarity with the regular DataOps cycle, DevOps cycle, but DataOps has its significant life cycle stages. And that the quicker the organizations understand, the easier for them to go up the MLOps layer. Because if you don't have your data layer pipelines, data pipelines run properly, none of your MLOps pipelines are going to run. That is for sure. Abhijit has done a lot of work around this. He will be able to explain. Abhijit might want to touch this DevOps, DataOps, MLOps, that kind of a transition, because most of the organizations are trying to talk about MLOps without properly having a DataOps pipeline. And they have a challenge here. I'll stop here. Abhijit, over to you.
Yeah, this is a very excellent point. And I think, Abhijit, we will love to hear from you about the connections going from DevOps to DataOps to MLOps. Can you highlight briefly on this and then we can move on to the next question?
Yeah. So the thing is, when the movement begins, like people will move from lean to agile to then DevOps. So after that, people is realizing that the cultural transformation, what brings in terms of DevOps to the people, that is the main thing in terms of DevOps. So in that way, instead of only looking into technology, instead of looking only into practice, it is important to look into the people so that they can be enabled to understand the value of DevOps, or such kinds of thing will be coming up. So when they understood, when the people who are actually working understood about the DevOps thing, about the cultural thing, how the cultural change will bring the speed into the delivery of the software and the application, then they are extending this into the different dimensions of the different areas of the software engineering industry. Like as we see that, like DataOps is one of the area, MLOps is one of the area, AIOps is one of the area. Now you can see that there are something called terms are coming up like SecOps, okay, like NetOps, okay. So people are trying to bring all those things and merge together, and they wants to put it like it's converted into a people problem, and they will make the people enable to make their daily life easy. So in that perspective, when we talk about the data ops and the DevOps and the ML ops and the AI ops, all these are linked because all these things is needed for a particular organization. So in an organization, for application development, the DevOps is required. But when we talk about the business, then the business, what they're doing is they are taking their customers' data and that flows through their logic, and they are doing business. So that is where the data is become so important. Okay, and that's the place where the data ops is coming. So that's where the DevOps should be implemented properly, so that there are lots of things like observability, logging, metrics calculation, event logging, okay, then traces, okay, all those things can be captured properly, so that the observability will be increased. And then from that, how the data can be extracted well, so that it will help the different team member who are practicing the data transformation, that can help and enable themselves, and which will help, for example, a data scientist to understand, to analyze the data more clearly, and to understand that how they can categorize the data and feed it to the further for example, the feature store, so that from that point onwards, it will be taken towards the ML ops part. So that's why the maturity of data ops is so important for the ML ops to start with, that that make the difference. So if your data ops is not strong enough, then your ML ops also will be suffering. The machine learning capability what you are going to develop, so that also will be suffering. So similar way, when we talk about AI ops, which is where the ML ops is part of the AI ops, because AI ops consist of ML ops and the additional artificial intelligence programs or implementations or applications what you are doing. So together it is called the AI ops. So that's why the AI ops also will be very much affected or influenced by this particular data ops pipelines. Yeah.
Excellent conversation, actually. And Raghu, you explained the engineering principles and the assessment methodology you are following in the BSI space. So that's really, really interesting. And Abhijit, you actually connected the dots with DevOps, DataOps, and AI Ops. And this is a good segue to the next question. I was wondering, what is the connection of AI Ops with Data Ops? And I would position this question to Arthur, and then we can continue this discussion with Mahfuzar, because I would like to also get some perspective from Pepsi, how they are implementing data ops and eventually AI ops into their pipelines and their value chain creation. Yeah, Arthur, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so 100% agree with what Abhijit said in terms of AI ops. There's two lenses you can look at it. First is what composes AI ops, and it's absolutely true that you need data ops and ML ops for AI ops to be complete. Because if you look at AI ops, the insights and the AI recommendations and things that it does needs that data to come in to feed it, to train it. So training on the logs so that you control and say, okay, this is an anomaly that I found in the logs or metrics or events. But the way that you throw that anomaly is through the models. So then you need ML ops in there as well. And it's quite interesting because we saw that in our journey here at IBM doing AI ops, where at first we just had a very kind of lightweight data ingestion, where you ingest the data and the data is there and you assume that it's correct and you use it. Same thing with the models. Data scientists created the models, you put it in there and you don't do anything with it. And over time, we saw, well, sometimes the data is not accurate. Sometimes the model needs to be trained more. So then we started to going back and then applying maybe in a more proper way the upside of it. So, okay, the data life cycle. So maybe we got the data, it was wrong. How can you redeploy it or modify it or monitor? Same thing with the models that come in. Now we have, you know, in one of the solutions that we work on, we have a panel that you can look at your models. So it's like the ML ops side of it, because sometimes the model is not trained enough, so the recommendations won't be so accurate. Sometimes you need to delete the model and recreate it with new data because some parameters have changed. So we found that for AI ops to be complete, you do need to have a very good and solid data ops and ML ops strategy to fit it in. And the second lens, which interesting enough is you can, once you have this kind of complete AIOps solution, you can turn around and you can help DataOps and MLOps be successful. And this could be the pipelines that you use for AIOps or a completely independent one. So if you look at it, somebody's doing getting data for marketing, and they have this very rich DataOps pipeline. AIOps can actually help in each stage of the software lifecycle, software here being data, to maybe create some gates that, hey, the data quality needs to pass this kind of criteria, and learn with the AI and machine learning models over time what is something that's going to be accurate or that's something that's going to be beneficial. So that's the interesting second part of AIOps, is applying to all the XOps pipelines, because at every stage, most users of AIOps is still for applications like, hey, my banking app, apply AIOps there so my banking app doesn't go down, or if it goes down, you can help me figure out why it went down and the incident kind of management of it. But you can certainly apply to models, to data, and I think they will all benefit because they all, underneath the covers, they're all kind of DevOps principles. So you can apply AIOps to each part of that. So that's kind of the two. So it's both a parent and a sibling of all the ops. That's how I would summarize it.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Arthur, on this, and we discussed the full stack approach for AIOps, right? So I'll come back to you with that question. But Mahfuzar, I would like to understand from you at Pepsi, how are you dealing with the scale of the operations, and how AIOps and DataOps fit it in there?
Very, very interesting and timely question, Garima. So for us, we used to say that if you walk into Walmart with 80% of accuracy, we can tell that what you're going to pick up with salsa bottle, right? But I think those predictions are wrong right now. So let me tell you what some of the work that we have done. Recently, I would say in the last 3 years has been a very interesting journey in professionally and personally. We have plugged into IBM Watson. We have Presto, Mongo, Snowflake, all the platform, you name it. And additionally, I believe what has business created, data scientist role. And these are the folks that not part of IT, they're not working with me, but they're my partner, working directly with the business. And how we know that this is working for us, in fact, every region in the US and Canada, our business operates very differently. The business in Toronto operate very differently from business in Calgary, business in Edmonton, business in Vancouver. These are the data scientists that are solving some of the problem that we're facing. And that's how the data is being utilized in our space. Without giving details, I can tell you that some of the problem that the geopolitical and with all this happening in the Europe, part of my core technical team sits in Moscow, right? And a lot of infrastructure, right? A lot of good infrastructure there. Coming back, we have a data first architecture, and we have a federated model. And I'm not sure if you, probably IBM is a big, I think they proposed this quite a big in federated model. So for us, the data is a federated model that we apply. And that federated model is built into our core of the business. And that's where we see, and we can see the behavior of some of our frontline. We can see the behavior of our customer. And we can see with 90% of accuracy or more than that, I would say that if you picked up a Tostitos at the Walmart, what else you can pick with that? So that's kind of analytics that we are following. And for me, part of it goes through my release pipeline, and definitely the data is core of my heart. And some of it, I see that the revolution is happening. And no matter what source of data coming from, what is it, the business, is the IT, is the back end, front end, we call it. But at the end of the day, the data, without the data, we can't sustain our business. Without the data, we can predict what is going to happen. And without some of those prediction, and all of you probably know that our growing culture, like the agriculture field in Bathinda, Garima, I don't know how far is that from your home. We can predict with IBM Watson that what is the growing season look like in the next couple months, right? Same thing in if you go to Cambridge, Ontario, or Burlington, Ontario, we can tell that how the cornfield will look like in the next couple months. And this is data. This is all data coming from different sources, and that's what we use. And again, the most recent one, the Alexa integration, and this is something that we're still working. So I would say that there's a lot of integration that's happening. I'm very, very proud of what we're happening. And some of the customer solution that's coming in the future, it's all AI driven, data driven. It is not that what we do behind the scene. It is all out there that how we utilize the data to make some of our business decisions. And that is what will lead us to the next phase of our business. And that's how I see the business is growing.
Excellent.
Can I add another area? I mean, we've been talking about retail, we've been talking about data, but there is another really important area where DataOps, I feel, has become extremely important and crucial, and that is the healthcare industry. Especially over the last few years, what the pandemic actually showed is that the healthcare IT organizations are not equipped to handle the amount of data that's coming in. And they, and we at VMware, we work with a number of these healthcare organizations, both from a provider and a payer perspective. And what the amount of advances that we've had, especially around improving patient experience, the encounters, the clinical pathways, the insight, the predictions, the predictive analytics that is required for some of these things, it's really stressing upon the fact that, you know, at the end of the day, the reason why you're looking at the data is so that you can meet your business outcomes, or you can meet some kind of a strategic goal that you're trying to accomplish. And in the past, I've worked in organizations where, you know, the data and the data strategy is a bolt-on, saying, okay, I'm collecting all this data and I'm hoarding it in my data center and probably putting it in a data lake. Now, what do I do with it? And by the time I actually do with it, it's probably expired, or I'm just hoarding petabytes of data and I don't know what to do. But now that thing has converted, and I think that's the secret sauce behind DataOps. It's trying to understand that foresight and that insight that you can get from the data, and then combining that with automated orchestration and then continuous deployment, having the testing and monitoring of the data pipeline, and bringing in those lean, agile, and DevOps philosophies and practices into the data realm. And I think it's a very exciting time for us right now, because we're looking at not only retail, but then we're looking at, you know, other tangible use cases where we're enhancing the power of data in a more methodical and a more strategic way rather than an afterthought.
Excellent points, Gautam. And I think you read my mind, because I was actually about to ask you and Mihir the question about data economy and how DataOps is supporting that philosophy of building data economy at scale. Now, there are two problems with it. The first problem is that data can only be collected current. You know, if you don't collect the data, you lose that opportunity. But there is another side of this story. We have to be very conscious about our carbon footprint. Obviously, there's a very, very small impact when it comes to ICT technologies. But if we become data holders and we start consuming and producing data at scale, we would be also looking at engineering principles, how we ensure that our carbon footprint is managed, and we are conscious about that. So Mihir, I'll actually put you on the spot for this, because this is really, really important question about how do we engineer the principles of data ops so that we balance the two sides of the coin, and how data ops is becoming very, very valuable in this context or equation, that we don't become data holders, but we also need to collect data which is available at present, to build that data driven economy, right?
Yeah, to be honest, this is a very it's a burning question for all the organization, especially large enterprise organization where data is kept in silos, and everybody is trying to get to the data, and everybody calls themselves, right? Actually, the concept of data ownership is switching, right? So, it's more about data rights now than ownership, because data sits in the lake or in the lake house or warehouse, whatever it is. Now, the way, at least I am thinking, and I've been talking to leaders within our organization and across from a data perspective is we want to, I'm going to say lightly, so we want to stop the copying of the data, stop replicating of the data, stop duplicating of the data, right? So understanding, that's number one, right? Can we all align on that principle? Right. So I understand cloud is, storage is cheap. It doesn't take much to do it. But then what's happening is you're sort of I guess the maintenance of that data on multiple places is going to cost us. And somewhere down the line, we're going to incur much more costs in terms of bad predictions and bad analytics. So number one, grounding on to make sure it's like, let's look at to standardize and get ourselves into a common data model or a semantic layer of data where we understand data not only from a perspective of tables and views and all that, but more of a business objects, right? So this is a paradigm fundamentally we need to move towards. And then number two, to really govern this, this whole notion of data fabric, right? Essentially what it means is, to me, I'm simplifying it as this, your metadata management, where the data is coming from, the data dictionary, the data freshness and traceability and all of that good stuff, but also putting those AI pieces on that whole data management to figure out when the data changes so the right people are aware of it and things are happening, right? So right now, you can have data ops, but what you don't have is when the changes happen in it, it's not automatically. Data ops and pipelines are helping transforming, putting data in the right place, but that piece needs to happen. So the number two thing is from a data fabric perspective, making sure that happens. And the last one is, where we are sort of the concept of data reusability, right? So I can tell you, everyone is creating a same variation of reports somewhere down the organization. It's just they're not talking. So we've solved the problem data ops, making sure everybody's using pipelines, great. Everybody has the speeds, great. They're using all cool technology, great. At the end of the day, reports are still duplicate. People still do not, I actually wrote an article on data literacy and I said why it is so important that everybody understand, because the problem is not everyone is grounded on the key terms, order, customer. I mean, I'm breaking down, right? I mean, it's very simple, inventory. So things are not there. And when it gets presented to executive, they're making decision based on that one, but it doesn't mean the same across anybody else, organization. So the whole concept of data literacy is coming, so simple stuff, that, so number one, on the data duplication, data management, and sort of the data literacy, and then sort of the shared services, right? Where we are actually now we're looking to form, sort of that sort of a cohort that actually looks across, right? I don't know, governance is a big word here, but somewhere around that we are sort of looking at it, right? So I call it like a architecture one-way team, which is actually looking at these things to say, don't do this. We already have it. So we have stopped, so putting a lightweight process integrated with Agile to help sort of govern this, right? People don't like governance and gates and checkpoints and all of that. I mean, trust me, I came from that environment. I don't like it anymore myself. So integrating that into the ways of working for them and then helping them do it. So hopefully, I mean, this will sort of create the sanctity of the data, of the process, sort of get rid of some of those silos and sort of reshare some of those things that are coming from it. So hopefully, I mean, that I am telling you, part of it I've implemented, part of it I'm thinking and discussing, and part of it I'm bringing it up to you guys to see what you all think about of the thought process that I have here.
Awesome. Gautam.
Yeah, I love the fact, Mir, that you brought up business architecture, data provenance, data literacy, and all those various things, because that is so crucial in implementing data ops the right way within an organization. I think I'll add a couple of things to what you have said. Especially when you're trying to implement these kinds of things, what I encourage people to do is to try to look at enforcing the or introducing the right kinds of behaviors, and that comes with like open and interoperable architecture. So you're trying to bring in that inverse Conway law approach, where you're trying to break down the barriers and have people talking through those interoperable architectures. The next thing that I would say is embracing those cloud native principles that you have. So it's all distributed, but at the same time, you're working towards the same things. They're discoverable. You're using reusable components, and you're not, reinventing the wheel. So the reports example that you gave was really, really powerful there. I'm pretty sure that even in any organizations, they're probably about 30 to 40% of waste, because people are just reusing or recreating the same reports or the same data just because they don't understand what the original report was. The next thing that I like to push for is that near real-time read and write, because that is so important to ensure that we're operating on the right amount of data and we're taking decisions, especially at a strategic level. We're taking decisions at more current data rather than stale data. So that's really important. I believe in having a machine learning first approach. And that's only because we are consuming too much of data. It is humanly impossible. There is no sustainable pace there. So we do want to have a machine learning first approach because of the sheer increase in data volume and complexity that we have. But I don't want them to just rely on the data. We need to have that human feedback. It's so important. We need to make sure that humans are engaged throughout the process and they are able to provide that intuition or maybe the domain-specific knowledge that they have out of experience that our machine learning algorithms probably have not reached yet. I mean, maybe in the future we'll have heuristic algorithms that will approach that. But I think right now we do need to have humans in the mix as well. So these are some things that I would add to what Mir said.
These are excellent points, and I think we are running out of time, but I will actually present the last question to the panel, and we'll start with Arthur, and let's be brief on, your take on what is your North Star with DataOps and how we can build upon this idea for scaling it, and also from a investment perspective that we maximize and capitalize on the return of investment. So Arthur.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so kind of like the North Star that I use from the DataOps space is tying the observability that you get with actionable things that you can do. So, for example, incident response in the world of DataOps. I think for data, one of my North Stars would be applying these AI principles to the whole life cycle of data, because I think that's how you're going to achieve a better level of being more efficient, seeing silos where they are, seeing maybe an anomaly in data would be that you see that 2 or more reports are being made for the same data, right? This is something that maybe AI can flag as an anomaly that somebody can take an action. So I think getting observability even from the data pipeline and creating actionable items for that, I think that's kind of would be my North Star for the future of DataOps.
Yeah, let's follow the popcorn approach. I'll pass the ball to Raghu now.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to say something. I was very intently hearing the narrative. You see, data ops should not be confused with data architecture. In data architecture, there is a separate discipline called data governance. There is a separate discipline called data quality, which has been there much, much before DevOps actually was born. Let us be clear on that. Second, why are we talking about data ops? Because we want agility in our data pipelines. Say, for example, we have got some data operations that is happening and we want the meta models or the meta information of those data to move fast. Correctness or running analytics is not the primary objective of any data ops professional. Let us be very clear about that. So if somebody wants to run MLOps pipeline, there is a separate way to look at it. Of course, Arthur will be able to say, but DataOps guys, like DevOps, has got specific objective and role. If we kind of mix DataOps with an additional responsibility of analytics delivery, then you are expecting too much out of a DataOps guy. Okay, I think some of us will agree, some of us will disagree. But this is how most of the customers look at it. If you go to any standard, DevOps team, large DevOps team who are also practicing DataOps, they will say our job is to just ensure that the data flows properly. Whether the analytics is running or not running is some other team's job. That is how typically it is happening. Okay. But that does not solve the cultural problem. For that, there is another dimension called biz DevOps, which brings in the business and the IT together for these activities where you can talk about all these things. So where a lot of discussions, Garima, are happening in the world of biz DevOps. So a natural progression of DataOps is towards business, and this coinage of biz DevOps, biz Dev SecOps, I mean, you can start coining terms, but that's how the dimension goes. I'll stop here because we have a paucity of time. But Abhijit, you want to add a few words? I mean, I gave a different spin. So whether you want to continue with that spin or you want to give a separate spin yourself, up to you.
Yeah, so in fact, the same thing, Raghubir. So the thing is, it is always the data will be created from the DevOps pipeline and the DevOps practices. And then when it comes to the data ops, it is all about the culture, that how we can enable the people who are practicing data ops or try to process the data, how we can enable them, how we can make them more collaborative process, how can we enable them, and then that will move forward the data to the different part like MLOps, and that will be fed to the AI ops. So like that, the flow will go. And when we talk about the biz DevSecOps, so at that time, we can see that that is also a DevOps practice where the society became the dev and the business became the ops. Okay, in the same way, when the IT became the ops and the business became the dev. Okay, so it's the same concept. So yeah, so in a nutshell, yeah, so what I can conclude is when we talk about the DevOps, it is all about the culture, how we enable, and definitely there are lots of technology which is already available, and people more, instead of focusing on only the technological part, only the automation part, people should focus on the collaboration and the cultural part as well. Yep.
Excellent twist, and I will actually hand it to Mahfuzar. For your North Star, you come from a very large scale product company.
So for us, the North Star is that solving some of the business problems that we're facing. And this is what keeps us awake at night. And this is what will keep us awake at night. And for example, I'll just stop it here, that how do you predict how many cases of product that you will be required in the Rogers Arena here on a pre-game, right? So those kind of prediction will put us forward, and that's exactly what we're trying to solve.
Excellent, Gautam.
I think one of my North Stars, or at least one of my hopes, is to make sure that organizations don't go down the route of creating DevOps teams separate from everything and then create data ops teams and then just pigeonhole everyone into that. That's one of my North Stars. I really hope we don't make that mistake. But you know, it's inevitable, it's going to come. So it's unfortunate. I'm sure there are organizations that are already spinning up those teams. But for me personally, as long as we are driving towards our business outcomes, using data insights and analytics with low friction, along with using the right cloud native technologies with human feedback and a machine learning first approach in near real time, I would say that we're on the right track of democratizing data and utilizing the data that we're collecting within our organizations.
Awesome. And Mir, I actually wanted to end this session with your North Star because we all wanted to jump when you were speaking, right? So I wanted you to give you the last spot on this panel. Yeah, Mir.
Thank you. First of all, great insights that everyone has provided here. So a lot for me to reflect and take on from here, for sure. And so in terms of my North Star, right, from a data ops, I see data ops as a start of, from left to right, right? I start with data ops, and the way I see it is like real-time data triggers with the data quality embedded in it, applying the principles of engineering, right? Treat data ops as an engineering principle, applying those engineering principles to be able to produce the data, in the format that could be leveraged by apps or analytics, both, right? So I see apps and analytics sometimes, one after the other, or sometimes, in parallel. So that's where I see my data ops, right? The mindset, the engineering mindset needs to come to data ops and being able to do that. One point that I do want to highlight that I think I forgot the gentleman who is that Raghuveer Mir, right? It says they leave the data ops team to do one thing. The problem is enormous to leaving them to do what they do without having the right structure to support it. And we have a chaos, and that's because the governance and the pieces needs to be in place for data ops to be successful. Same thing as DevOps to be successful, you need to have things in place to be successful, whether it's a governance, whether it's architecture, reference architecture, use cases, best practice. Anyway, so I'm happy to have that discussion later on, Raghuveer, and sort of deep dive into it, but now I'll end here.
This is excellent conversation because we leave people thinking about it. And I think I'll add to this mix that I was interacting with some people who are working solely on DevOps and DataOps, and the perspective actually is the difference of perspective is in the approach, and no one single approach will fit all, right? So some people will require going fast, right? Being on the fast lane. So data ops for them would be more agile, more fast, more flow of information. On the other side, there will be companies who are highly regulated, who wants to opt in, opt out. So there are like a mix of things happening in this space, and I think it is yet to be matured. And that's where this panel comes handy, because you can actually assess where you are in your journey, pick and choose what works for you, and this is what we are here for. So I think this is an excellent conversation because we give different perspectives and different approaches to data ops. And if, let's say, this panel instigates more conversation, we would write a white paper out of it. And I would now like to thank the panel for being here, getting engaged with our audience, and hopefully we can continue the conversation outside this panel. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for your support for the DataOps Summit Canada. Stay tuned for other discussions, panel, and fireside chat coming soon. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.